This is your boy Leon D. We're going to talk about a lot of things on this podcast, primarily food. I like to talk about food a lot, but we're going to talk about food around the world. We're going to talk about some other things that's going to touch your heart or make you mad. It really don't matter, but I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you about it though. DJ Leon D. Peace. Let's get it on. We're going to talk about something that's very, very important. And I get asked this question a lot. I mean a lot. This episode, we're going to talk about dry rub versus brine. Let's get right to it. Here's the deal. When this comes to dry rub versus a brine, it's kind of like asking an alcoholic versus a weed smoker. Which one do you prefer? Of course, the alcoholic don't prefer the weed because he wants a brine. And of course, the weed person don't want the alcohol because they want it dry. So that's where we're going to start at. And see, brine is a method of just really giving your meat a bath. It's to give your meat a bath. And don't get me wrong, it's going to get in every nook and every cranny of that particular meat. Because you really submerging the meat, you're going to submerge that meat into whatever brine you're going to use. So, me personally, I don't really care for brine a lot. I don't brine very many things at all. Now, I am a dry rub master. I like a dry rub, and I'm going to tell you why. There are some differences in it too. A brine is ideal if you're doing something like a thin piece of meat. Something like fish. Yeah, brine works out great on seafood because seafood is very, very thin. But when you're doing something like a brisket or pork shoulder, nah, brine just don't do it. Because the brine's going to get in there, but here's the problem you have. With brine, is you're going to get some decent seasoning, but the fire is going to burn the brine off. But now you will have, the taste in the nooks and crannies of the meat, but it's going to burn it off. That's why I don't care about brine. Now, when you do a dry rub, you're going to have a crust on it. And if you really want to know how to look for this and how this works, just go brine some ribs, a slab of baby backs or a slab of my preference, St. Louis, just brine it. And then do a dry rub. And then see which one tastes better. Because you will not have that seasoning on every single bite like you can on a dry rub. Oh yeah, there's a difference. And like I said earlier, it's the alcoholic versus a weed smoker. They both do the same thing. They damage your body. They just do it in a different way and over a longer period of time for some things. The weed smoker isn't going to die from smoking weed, but he's not going to be functioning at all. So you have your choices there. Now, when it comes to big pieces of meat, low and slow, the brine, when you brine it and you put it on a smoker, half of it from the very beginning is going to just fall off because it's wet. It's like water. Water doesn't work upside down. Take a cup of water, turn it upside down, and see what happens. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to brining. Now, some people swear by brining, and nothing wrong with that. But the other problem with brining is that the process is longer. Because you can't brine. I've heard people say, I can brine for 30 minutes. No. To get in all the nooks and crannies, you got to brine for hours, if not days. Yeah. When you do a slow and low cook, you got to brine for days, hours. And it takes up additional room in your refrigerator or in your house or basement, whatever you do. It's very seldom. Brining, see, people think brining is kind of like frying. But frying is different. And the temperature is not only that, the temperature is different because the temperature is bubbling because it's going to go past 212 degrees, which is the temperature for boiling. So all that nooks and crannies and all that hard work you did, that stuff is fell the hell out. Oh yeah, it's fell out. But dry rub will stay there. Perfect example. You put dry rub on some ribs, you give it about an hour, hour and a half, you're going to have that seasoning now is embedded permanently on that rib. So that's why I tell everybody, if you're going to do one of the two, do the dry rub. And plus, dry rub just a lot less logistics. You take it out, you clean the meat, and you put your rub on, and you throw it on the smoker. Brining, you gotta have some kind of a container for it. It's just it's just additional things you just gotta do. So, and then brining, you can mix it any way you want to, and you can have all kind of stuff with brining. But it's just difference. And you definitely can taste the difference too. It's the reason why people smoke salmon. But you can brine salmon and put it on a board. Now, that's not bad because the board is going to hold a lot of that moisture. It's going to hold all that brining work you did. But some meats, it just doesn't work. Because and then when you brine and you take it out of the container, just put a little salt on it and you're good to go. Because you're going to have to add something to it when you brine. You're going to have to add something to it. And then one of the things about brining too is that brining, whatever your mixture is in brining, whatever your mixture is, it doesn't penetrate skin, but at the same time, when you do a dry rub, it doesn't penetrate fat. And so that's one of the things you got to look at. You got to say, hey, I'm not going to be able to get into the fat. It just doesn't, it's just impossible because fat renders itself. So it's going to burn off. Look at bacon. Bacon's a perfect example. You get pork belly and bacon is the reason why people, like the bacon part or pork belly. Because pork belly is just the bacon and the fat. People cut the fat off and call it bacon and say, this is great. So that's just how it works. But saying that though, I know people who like to brine a lot. And really, you taste the difference. They're just used to it. And their standards is that, hey, I can get a tub, make some formula and some liquid, throw about 15 pieces of fish in there, and I'm done. That is true. That is true. But if your heart is not into it, just don't do it. It is what it is. But like I said, if you got a thin piece of meat, I would definitely say go with brining because dry rubs don't work great on thin pieces of meat, but it's got to be thin. It can't be like your neighbor it cannot be like your neighbor over there. It can't be fat. No. Can't be fat. So if you want to know which one to use, you have to know what you're using it for and what type of meat you're going to apply it to. You have to know these things. And if you don't, then you're going to just, you can't, like I said, you're just going to brine something that you should not brine, and you're going to do a dry rub on things you shouldn't do a dry rub on. I have really never dry rubbed, salmon, and when I say that, I mean, like I put a little seasoning and other stuff on it, but I'm not out there, treating like I would a rib, not doing that kind of stuff. So if you want to get consistent taste, brining is not bad because you can make the formula any way you want to, and you can make it very consistent. When you use a dry rub, it's never going to be the exact same every single time because, it depends on your shaker, it depends on your hand, it depends on the wind, it depends on a lot of different factors that you can't control. Half the rub, I seen a guy the other day, and he was doing some dry rub on a pork shoulder, and hell, he had this thing in his mind that the higher he holds it up, the better it is. He was holding up, and the wind was blowing the seasoning air all over his deck because it was like about 30 miles an hour wind that day, and none of it was touching the food. And I said, hey man, if you hold it closer to the food, you come out in a better situation, and you'll not throw away 2/3 of all the seasoning you bought today. because the way you're going, you're gonna run out. So he caught on to that, and he was like, okay, I got it. But if he would have brined it, he would have had all the moisture on that meat. But as soon as the fire hit it or the heat hit it, it would have just burnt it off. But now, one thing you can do, and a lot of people don't do this. I don't do it. Most people don't do it, but you can do it, and nothing wrong with it. You can brine and then use a dry rub. Yes, you can do that. But you do that only if you get medium-sized cuts of meat. Because when you add seasoning to it, you're doing a dry rub. And if you add any kind of seasoning to your seafood, which I say is the best for brining because it's thin, when you add anything to that, then you're winning. Yes, you're winning. So the thing you have to do is just that you got to just pay attention to it. And brining, usually when you brine food, your heat is a little hotter, except for seafood. But your heat is a little hotter, and that's what contributes to you burning off all the chemicals, off the meat. I mean, that all plays a part in you burning all the chemicals off the meat. Now, saying that, I've seen people brine pork belly. I have no clue why. Because the pork belly is a thick piece of meat. It's thick as hell. Like a lot of people in the South. And a lot of people in the Midwest. It's just thick, and no matter what you do, you're not really going to penetrate it. But yet, you can put dry rub on it. It's not a problem at all. So I would, pork shoulders, brisket, all these things that you might want to crunch from, I would definitely make sure I did a dry rub on them. And brining can get pricey because it depends on how you make your concoction. It can cost you a couple pennies. Not just the apple juice, but sometimes people want citric and all kind of other things in there. And I'm not sure why they would want citric on any of their thin pieces of meat. Because if you put anything citrus on there, you got to cut it with something else. You can't just put apple juice by itself. You got to put some vinegar or apple cider vinegar. You just got to have a couple things. Brining, when it comes to dry rub, really everything you need is already in the bottle. Now, saying that, I don't use just one dry rub on any meat. If I use a chicken rub, I'm putting dirty bird with it. If I use a steak rub, I'm putting allspice with it or all seasoning with it. So I'm using a combination of things when I dry rub. And the same thing with brining. Brining, using, like I said, you got to cut it with something. You got to cut it with something. So it don't really make a lot of difference as far as what you want to do, as long as you do what you need to do. And that's where the problem comes in. Having 85 flavors, let me tell you something. This is the truth. I ate a piece of salmon someone had brined, and he was bragging about he used 15 different things. Let me tell you something. This is just reality. Your damn taste buds is not going to identify 15 different things in any food. No. Whatever is the most dominant thing you added to that food, that's what your taste buds are going to taste. You have people say, oh man, you had arugula, you had cumin, you had salt, you had pepper. Oh, I tasted a little chili in there. No. No, they didn't. They're just guessing and trying to impress you that, hey man, you did a great job. I really appreciate it. But at the same time, the food was free. That's all they're doing. They're not going to identify all of it. I've taken a piece of meat and somebody said, this is well seasoned. I had no seasoning at all on the meat. And the reason I put any seasoning on it, because my wife and I eat totally different. We eat totally different. To me, there's only a few cases where there's too much seasoning. Only a few cases. To her, every single seasoning in the world is too much for her. You can put one piece of salt on a hamburger, and that is too much. She likes her food seasonless. No seasoning at all on it. I can't stand that shit like that. I gotta know that. I mean, if I buy beef, I want to be able to say, "Hey, this is some good beef." But I gotta have the beef that tastes good to me. I cannot sit there and tell her how great something is when there's no seasoning. Now, when we were younger, she was put seasoning on everything, the right amount, all the perfect things. But as we get older, our taste buds change. They change a lot. And to give you a perfect example, when I was younger, I preferred beer over liquor. As I got older, and well, maybe I wasn't old, I got smarter. I realized that 6 beers didn't taste good. The first beer did. By the fourth beer, it just didn't taste good. But I can sit there and have me a nice shot of a martini or some cognac or some rum or whiskey. And maybe because I'm drinking for a different reason. I'm drinking purely to be social, to be sociable. So that's where I am. Maybe when I was younger, I was drinking to get drunk. And the freer it was, the more I drink. But I think we all go through that stage in life. And then one day we wake up and say, that was a lot of dumb shit I did. Because it was a lot of dumb shit, that we did. So my whole point is, when it comes to brine versus dry rub, I'm going to pick dry rub every single time, even on a thin piece of meat, because I can make it work. I can make it work. So that's just something I did, and that's my advice. But at the end of the day, you got to do the method you think. A lot of people choose one over the other because they're lazy. They are just pure lazy. But I don't mind putting in the work for good tasting food. It's kind of like I told a guy one day, nothing is worse than an angry chef. I don't want to order food from an angry chef. Put yourself in that chef spot. If you're mad as hell, are you going to bust your ass to make sure everything is perfect? No, you're not. You really don't give a damn what people think, because you got an attitude already. And I've had fish where, particularly salmon, where the skin didn't come off at all. And I'm thinking, okay, if the skin don't come off the salmon because it's burnt, it's way overcooked. This is steam, smoke, whatever. That skin on the salmon should come right off. But some people, they buy it with it already off. I don't get that at all. Don't understand it. And it don't make no damn sense to anybody I know. But some people take it as a pride thing. So, this is your boy Leon D. I'm just telling you that this DJ here who likes to cook, who's a master chef at a lot of things, we just have our opinion on how we should do it and how it should look, how it should taste. And if you want yours differently, by all means, invest in what you want to do and do it the way you want to do it and feed it to who you want to feed it to. Just don't offer it to me. Just don't offer it to me. That's just how it works. That's just how it feels. So this is your boy DJ Leon D. We're out for another episode. See you very, very soon.